What happens to the area in the middle? I see Michael's hand up. Michael, what happens to that? And this is important, you understand this. This is how a tornado begins forming with this. Go ahead.
The air starts to rotate in the middle?
It starts to rotate like a giant cylinder. And it may be miles and miles wide. 8, 10, 12 miles wide. So you're talking about a cylinder of air starting to rotate horizontally on its side. That's how it begins, by two different speeds of wind, two different temperatures of wind, and that causes a rotation of air in between. Now, I guess the easiest way to explain that, and some of you have seen this already, Austin, help me out, would be this. Stand up here with me. You take one end. Stretch it. Okay. This might extend for hundreds of miles, this horizontal rotating cylinder of air. You have cool, dry air above blowing this way toward the Great Plains, and you have warm, moist air underneath blowing slower, that's warmer, and it causes this to start rotating like a drum. And it gets wider and wider and wider, 8 to 10, 12 miles wide. Okay, this is not a tornado, is it? Okay, can I let it go? Be careful. Okay, now, that is not a tornado yet. We call this rotating drum. Well, there's not a name for it yet. Then, something occurs to this rotating drum. Let me get my pointer. As this makes its way over the Great Plains, let's say you live in Kansas or Nebraska or Missouri, something may happen below this. A thunderstorm is forming above it. A supercell is above it. It has formed by adiabatic cooling. There's enough moisture. And this just happens to be underneath of it. You may get an updraft that blows that rotating cylinder up in the middle, so it gets pushed up. And it makes its way up in the middle. There's a term for that. Your book has a certain term. Once that rotating updraft begins making its way up, we call that a mesocyclone. That's the term. We're on page 269 right now, that bold print word at the very top. That rotating cylinder that is moving from a horizontal position to a vertical position is called a mesocyclone. That's the name that meteorologists give to it. And is it a tornado yet? Not yet. It's just a part of that supercell, because as it turns and makes its way vertical, it really becomes a part of that supercell. It'll start to thin out, your book says. It gets narrower. It's not 8 to 10 miles wide anymore, but it'll start to stretch out up and down. It might get as tall as the entire supercell. What do you mean, Mr. Enders? You mean that mesocyclone could get as tall as the tropopause? It could. It could reach the altitude of the tropopause if it's strong enough, if it gets stretched out enough. So go ahead and turn the page to 270. So the mesocyclone is really the heart, your book says, the heart of the supercell. It's the heart of it. Now, some things start to happen when that turns vertical. Just because it turns vertical doesn't mean a tornado is going to form. No, because tornadoes, out of 100 of these supercells, only one may form. One tornado may form out of 100 supercells. And so some things need to happen still. What are some other things that happen here? It tightens and stretches. Air is drawn up through that like a pipe. It grows vertically, increases its wind speed. Some things occur here. Now, what's the first sign that a tornado may appear? By the way, can we see a mesocyclone, students? Can we see it? No, it's just wind. We can't see it. There's no condensation there yet. The air has not hit the dew point so that it turns into a cloud yet. It's just it's a rotating cylinder of air. That's all it is. That's now vertical, that was pushed up by the updraft. So the first sign, mark it in your book. It's in italics in the second paragraph. You notice it? I don't have it on the board. It's called a wall cloud. A wall cloud. Now there's a photo of one on page 270 of a wall cloud. What is a wall cloud? It's just a large rotating cylindrical extension from the base of the supercell. This is really the base of the mesocyclone, the wall cloud. Now, often when you have people going out to hunt tornadoes, meteorologists that look for tornadoes, they get good shots of the wall cloud. I'm going to show you one in just a second here. I have a video clip of a wall cloud. It's a very high definition video of it. You're going to see it in just a minute. We often don't see wall clouds. Those of us that get to see tornadoes close up, most of us do not, but those of us who do, why can't you see a wall cloud? Why often can you not see a wall cloud? What's in the way? Tell us.
Rain.
Rain, precipitation, right. We can't see the wall cloud because it's being blocked by precipitation or hail or something, some kind of precipitation. And just because a wall cloud forms doesn't mean a tornado will form either. There have been tornado hunters that go out looking for tornadoes. They see a wall cloud form. It looks like a tornado. That's not the tornado, the wall cloud. The tornado is going to come, the funnel, a smaller funnel inside that wall cloud. It's going to form. So they're often disappointed. They see a wall cloud, nothing forms. It's a neat sight. They're going to see rotation. In fact, we're going to see the rotation right now. The winds at the base of the wall cloud, often 75 miles an hour before the tornado forms. That's a hurricane force wind, 75 miles an hour. 74 miles an hour is hurricane force wind. So it's a dangerous wind at the base of the wall cloud. Even if a tornado is there, students watching, I wouldn't suggest running under a wall cloud. You'll get knocked off your feet. 75 miles an hour will knock you off your feet, especially if you get downbursts or microbursts from that wall cloud. Let's go and take a look produced by Tornado Videos. And you can see the wall cloud there. These are tornado hunters in a vehicle. This was taken from a vehicle. And this is a very short clip. I only got a little bit, but you'll get the idea once I start it. Now, they're going toward it. Let me stop it there a minute. Is that a tornado? It's not. It's a wall cloud. This wall cloud was formed from a mesocyclone that was once a rotating cylinder horizontally, and it was pushed vertically by an updraft so that it's inside the supercell right now. And from that wall cloud, a tornado is probably going to form. That's a pretty good sized wall cloud. I only have a few more seconds, but let me show you what I do have. Do you see the rotation? Are you looking at it? I'm going to stop it there. Do you notice the counterclockwise rotation of that wall cloud? It looks very slow from here, but it's not slow at all. Let's take a look a little bit more at it. Do you notice the rotation of the wall cloud, the counterclockwise rotation? Now, let me stop it there. What do you see starting to form? A funnel. Is that a tornado yet? Well, it depends, because if you look closely under that funnel forming, you may not see condensation on the ground. That funnel may have touched the ground and may have become a tornado. I'm seeing some dust being blown up at the bottom toward the ground, and this is just about over. So I don't think we're going to see any more, but let me just go ahead and run it to see if we can see. Look at the ground to see if you see any dust or dirt being knocked up. Stop there. You can see the condensation funnel being formed. That is because the air in that wall cloud has hit the dew point, hasn't it? Now, look on page 270. 270 at the very bottom. Let's mention some things there at the very bottom of the page. We just saw a smaller funnel, a smaller cylinder forming of rotating air. That's what we saw, and that's what it's talking about here at the bottom of the page. It may or may not form. When that inner funnel of rotating air reaches the ground, and it almost has reached the ground in that video, it becomes a tornado. Do you see the process of a tornado formation? It's not simply just circulating air that begins in a cloud that makes its way from cloud to ground. It eventually does that. But there's some things that have to happen before that funnel forms. You have to have wind shear, like I showed you, from the Rocky Mountains to the Gulf of Mexico. You have to have rotating horizontal air, turns into a mesocyclone, and the conditions have to be just right for that tornado to form. Now, let me ask our students watching this. Hey, students watching, is the pressure inside a tornado low pressure or is it high pressure? What do you think? What's the pressure like inside that funnel? Okay, Symphony? What do you think?
Low pressure?
Low pressure. It's low pressure because you have air that's rising and you have air that's being sucked into that funnel. That's how objects get taken into that tornado, that funnel, because of the low pressure inside that funnel. Hey, if you're standing near a tornado, you would get sucked into that low pressure and blown wherever because of the pressure difference between the outside of the funnel and the inside of the funnel. So notice the next term now on the board. It's called a condensation funnel. This is simply the most distinctive visual feature of a tornado. You won't always see a condensation funnel. Sometimes a tornado forms without the air dropping below, the air hitting the dew point and condensing to a cloud, but it often will. And that's what we saw forming in that video clip just a few minutes ago. We saw the condensation funnel forming, and it would eventually reach the ground. How does that happen? The air inside that funnel hits the dew point and condenses, and that's it. Now, when do you see tornadoes most often? Is there a time of the year that we see them here in the United States? What months would you often see tornadoes? Would you see them in December? Would you see them in August? Would you see them in November? How about February? Well, you may see them in those months, but the months that we see them most and really are the spring toward the summer. Really the worst months are the extremes of change, where you have very cold air in the Rockies, which would be, March still, where you have warm air blowing up from the Gulf of Mexico. We're talking March, April, May, the worst months. So if you're in those months right now, students watching, March, April, May, spring, and then the fall season right after summer, you're going to get some extreme weather there. We call the area in the Great Plains, we mentioned this in our last lesson, called Tornado Alley. The Great Plains from South Dakota all the way down to Texas. Now look at the bottom of page 270 very quickly. The most dangerous part of the tornado is not how it looks. That's not the most dangerous part. The most dangerous part is not the condensation funnel, it's the wind caused by the circulation. Mark that at the bottom of page 270. That wind does terrible things to railroad trains, railroad cars, buildings. It crumbles brick buildings, it shatters them as if they were toys. Often people say a safe place to go if you're out in a car in a tornado would be under an interstate bridge, under one of those overpasses. Crawl up inside, and that would be a safe place. It really is if you're out. Don't stay in your car. That'll be taken up. Crawl under. We'll talk more about this in our next lesson. Now, turn to page 271. They're very unpredictable. Hurricanes are predictable. Tornadoes are not predictable. Tornadoes often move in a direction from south. If a tornado starts here at this point, let's say that's a little town, it'll often move from southeast to north, southwest to northeast in that direction. That's the normal movement of tornadoes in the northern hemisphere. How fast are they? Well, they can get as fast as 150 miles an hour. Not the spin, but racing across the ground as slow as 34 miles an hour. You can't outrun them. You can't do that. Don't try. Another term we needed to mention, how they measure tornadoes. They measure them not by the Mohs scale of hardness, as we use when we measured minerals and their hardness, or by the Richter scale when we measured the strength of earthquakes. They measure tornadoes by the, not Fajita, but Fujita. Fajitas too, but it's called the Enhanced Fujita Scale, named after Dr. T. Theodore Fujita. He came up with the F scale first of all. It was just the F scale without the enhanced before they improved it in 2007. Now it's called the EF scale, or the Enhanced Fujita scale. It's more accurate than the original scale was. It goes from F0, the weakest tornadoes, up to F5, the strongest. F5s rarely occur. F4 tornadoes rarely occur. They happen once in a while. But you'll often see F1, F2, F3 tornadoes, even an F0. In fact, there's a scale there that tells you about the tornado scale. It tells you how strong the winds are. Up to 300 miles an hour, those winds. Take your assignment pads out, please.